And we are on. It is exactly 12:01 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for joining me for the SEO Tear Down, episode 15. I am Scott Gombar, your host of the SEO Tear Down. And every week I come on Wednesday afternoon at about noontime to talk about how you can improve your SEO, maybe little tricks, little tips, an occasional SEO Google hack. And I am now doing this on Facebook Live, Twitter Live, and on Whoza, which is where everything originates, basically. So this week's the topic of the week is podcasting for SEO, and there's really a double meaning behind that. And what do I mean by that? So I've got a couple people joining me on Whoza. Let's see. Hey, Dr. Jeff, how are you? Podcasting for SEO, meaning really two things. So one is getting yourself on other podcasts as the expert, and two is creating your own podcast and creating show notes to go along with that. So as we know, Google can't read video yet. I'm sure it's coming someday. But if you create video content, you are engaging users because people prefer video over written content. And in doing so, you are creating some of the things that Google now looks for, and that's user engagement, time spent on the page, sharing, commenting, and things like that. All right, so how do you podcast? How do you go about podcasting for SEO? So first, you want to become a guest on other podcasts. And you're probably wondering, well, you know, all these business people out here, all these competitors in my industry, how do I get on a podcast? You know, it's not as hard as you might think. Yes, it's going to take some work. You're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to contact some people. But if you go on iTunes and search for podcasts in your industry, or even look for, new and noteworthy podcasts in iTunes, you'll see podcasts, and you could break it down by industry, by, you know, the topics you're looking for. And you'll see podcasts that maybe relate to what you do. Ask them. Send them a message saying, can I come on your show? I've had a lot of success with this. Probably 65, 70% of the podcasts I've reached out to have said, yeah, come on, love to talk to you. I've had other podcasts reach out to me as a result of this outreach program. And so here's why this works for SEO. So now you get on, you do your podcast. And depending on the method of podcast, so I have two of my own podcasts, and this is what happens with my podcasts. Once it's done, it's recorded, I download it, I do some minor editing, most of it is left alone, and then I upload it, usually the same day. Now, other podcasts, some of them won't upload for a few weeks, and that's cool. But so here's what happens. Get the podcast recorded, and whenever they release it, now they're going to create the podcast episode, and it's going to go on their website. If they have a separate website, sometimes they do it on Libsyn or something like that. But if they have a separate website, and now they create show notes. And in the show notes, there's usually a backlink back to your website if you've done things the way you're supposed to do them. Okay. And this is a backlink. Whoa, you've got a backlink. Now imagine if you do, 20 podcasts in a year, you've now done 20 backlinks to your website, and chances are most of those backlinks are pretty decent quality. Podcasts, if it's been around for a little while, has a decent reputation, is not a spam site, and has a decent quality on the links. So now Google gives you some credit for having a backlink to your site, because you've gone on, you've talked about what you're the expert on, and you've developed a backlink to your site. This is one method of podcasting for SEO, or SEO, developing your SEO using podcasting. It's a content development plan. So most business owners know, if they know anything about SEO, you know that you need to develop content in order to grow and succeed with SEO. The problem is most business owners think the only way to develop content is by blogging, and most business owners think they don't have the time to blog, And there's solutions for that too, but we'll get to that in another episode. But then, so they forget about everything else. And what they forget is that you can also create audio content, which is podcasts. Most podcasts are only audio. You can create video content, which is what I do. I do both video and audio. And then you can share the content you create show notes, and then you share the content across different platforms. So now, I've talked about how you get started podcasting, being a guest expert, right? And so you go to iTunes, you find podcasts related to what you do. The one thing I will tell you about iTunes is make sure that it's the podcast they have, they have a decent amount of podcasts, at least 10 or 12 at least, and that they're recent. So you'll find a lot of podcasts that have stopped doing podcasts, some of them years ago. And so reaching out to them is a waste of time, but reach out to the ones that are recent, that are relevant, and that have a decent number of podcasts. And you can see they have show notes on their site, and that you'll get a backlink to your site because they're looking, a lot of podcasters are looking to help business owners out. So get out there and find those podcasts. Other ways to find podcasts, just Google some. Go to other podcasting sites. There are tons of them now. Just Google podcasts. You'll find, I don't even know how many there are, but you'll find them, find out who's doing something related to what you do, and ask them, what's the worst they can say? The worst they can say is no, and then you're back where you were to start with, right? Then you move on to the next one. Make sure when you ask, that you bring something to the table. So don't just say, hey, I want to be a guest on your podcast. Because why do you want to be a guest? What do you bring to the table when you come on my show? All right. Now the flip side is create your own podcast. And you might think, well, my business, nobody's interested in a podcast. Trust me when I tell you, somebody out there is interested. And even if you don't think, you don't need to do it live. I do all of my podcasts live. I think it makes it a little more interesting. But you don't have to do that. You can record them on your computer and then upload them. There's a program called, oh boy, I'm going to draw a blank. So let me open it and tell you what it's called. And you can record on it. I just need to move my phone here. You can record on it, and it's free. Audacity. And then save the audio file, edit it if you want. There's editing tools in Audacity as well. And then upload it to Libsyn or some other podcast host site, and then feed it into iTunes. Now, here's what I've done. So I have two podcasts. I have the SEO Tear Down, which is, last week we had someone on Twitter asked me to audit the site and give feedback, and I did that. That was the goal of the show, but every week I bring you some SEO tips as well. And I have Growth Success Radio that's about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half old now. And Growth Success Radio has its own website. And then this show is hosted on my site, scottgombar.com. Now, what happens is both sites are WordPress, and I've installed PowerPress. And PowerPress walks you through the process of setting up your podcast so that it automatically uploads to iTunes and Google Play and so forth. And so this method is better than using Libsyn, and people are going to probably give me a little feedback on that. But here's the reason I think it's better. Because now, instead of Libsyn getting the credit for the content you're creating, you're hosting it on your own website. You have to essentially create a blog post and tag it with the appropriate tag, with the appropriate category, so that it feeds the podcast feed, because you're creating an RSS feed for your podcast. And in doing so, though, you now have content for your own website, and you're building a link program, linking backlinks and outbound links for your website. Because if I talk to someone, I'm going to add a backlink to their site. an outbound link to their site. So Google's not only looking for links to your site. Yes, those are probably more important, but they're also looking to see if you have links out of your site and links within your site, internal links. So this is why podcasting works. I haven't written a blog post in, I don't know, a month or two now. And I sat down today and said, wow, I have not written a blog post in a little while. I need to develop some content for my site. But the truth is I do this every week. So this is content for my site. This is SEO. And when I do this, I don't write a huge blog post. I write show notes. Now, I've a lot of podcasters have gotten transcriptions done. That can be either very time consuming or very expensive. However, I looking into that myself. So I'll let you know how that works out. But transcription is another way to develop content if you transcribe an entire podcast. And this one's probably not so bad because this is usually about 15 minutes, whereas growth success rate is usually about 45 minutes to an hour. So transcribing an hour-long audio or video can be a challenge. And I haven't found software that does it really well yet. So if there's any recommendations on that, I'd be happy to hear it. But now I've created this podcast for my site that's developed, that every week I come on and do this. 15 minutes it takes me to actually record. Maybe last week was a little longer. And then I have to download it, edit it, type up some show notes, and upload it. And that maybe another hour or two, depending on what else is going on. And now if I have fresh new content that's being fed to iTunes that people can listen to. It's being fed to Google Play, to Stitcher, to YouTube. I also upload it to YouTube, which is why I do video. To Facebook, I also upload the video to Facebook. Even though I record to Facebook Live, I then take the video and upload it to Facebook again later. So you go to my Facebook page, you see it there. And this is all to drive traffic back to my website. So I've talked to you guys every week now for 15 weeks, and I said, some of the things that Google's looking for now, and Bing. Okay, I'm going to do a show just on Bing in the near future, but they're looking for engagement. People prefer videos. They prefer audio over reading. They don't want to read 600, 1,000, 1,200 words. They want to watch or listen to when they can. The new trend is, of course, words across the video, but, again, that's going to take extra work and extra time. You could turn on closed captioning on YouTube and that helps, but it's not 100% accurate. As you'll learn, it is what it is. But you're developing a way to reach out to people that are going to come back to your site and maybe engage with your content, watch the video, stay on the page for a little longer because that's engagement. Comment. I've had comments on these podcast episodes. Share. I've had people share. And of course, you share it yourself, right? I share this out to Twitter and Google Plus and pretty much every social platform you can think of, LinkedIn. Everywhere I can share it, I share it. Okay. I'm getting a strange message on my Dropbox right now. But anyway, so you've created an outreach program to other podcasters to be featured guest on their show and tell them why you're the expert on whatever it is you want to go on for. So I typically reach out to small business type podcasts and say I want to come on and talk about SEO. And this creates a backlink to my site. You go on and talk about whatever it is you're the expert on. So on my Growth Success Radio show, which is really about small businesses, I've had attorneys on in different areas. Like next week, we have an attorney on to talk about collections. You don't get paid. What do you do? I've had different attorneys. I even had a chiropractor on. He was just on, who's watching me a few minutes ago, to talk about the health, how important health is to your business. So believe me when I tell you, it is important to have different types of guests on so that you can, the podcasts are looking for different types of guests, and it's hard. It's just as hard as it is for you to find podcasts to be a guest on. It's just as hard for them to find people to be on their show. Because this is what I do for Growth Success Radio. I look for guests all the time. And then create your own podcast. It is a growing trend. I don't know the numbers, but the number of podcasts compared to number of blogs is minuscule. It's like 10% of the number of blogs, and but it's growing. It wasn't that long ago there weren't that many blogs. So now everybody's got a blog, or almost everybody, because I still talk to business owners that don't, but not that many people are doing podcasts. So podcasts on your own site, and so if you have WordPress, which most of us do these days, install PowerPress and walk you through the settings, set it up. You might need a little help with graphic design or something. If you need some technical help, hey, reach out to me. I can help you with that. And of course, my phone is going to ring. And oh Lord, I apologize for that. Oh Lord, please hold. Okay, apologize for that. So yeah, if you need a little help with the technical aspect of setting up podcasts on your WordPress site, feel free to reach out to me, scottgombar.com. So this has been the SEO Teardown. That is my time for today. Remember that SEO is for the people. Keep on searching. Remember to join me again next week. What am I talking about next week? Let me see if I've decided already. Next week's episode of the SEO Teardown. That phone call just threw me through a loop. Yes, local SEO next week. So January 4th, 12 noon, we're going to talk about local SEO. We've talked a little bit about it in the past. We're going to talk about it some more, how to build that up, because it's becoming increasingly important. And then next Friday, January 6th, Growth Success Radio returns, episode 53. We are talking to, as I mentioned earlier, Miguel Almodovar about how to get paid. And what I mean by that is collecting on outstanding invoices. How do you go about doing that? So join me then, and I'll talk to you on my website, scottgombar.com. Again, SEO is for the people, and keep on searching.